The United States has expanded its maritime strike campaign, targeting vessels Washington says are involved in large-scale drug trafficking operations in the Caribbean. The latest escalation was confirmed during a U.S. cabinet meeting in Washington, where the U.S. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth delivered one of the strongest statements to date about the Biden-era narcotics landscape, the scope of cartel activity, and President Donald Trump's directive to intensify interdiction efforts. The meeting, held in the U.S. Capitol on December 2, brought together senior national security and defense officials to review ongoing operations in the Caribbean and along U.S. maritime approaches. These operations have become a significant component of the administration's security priorities, framed around disrupting transnational narcotics networks and what officials describe as narco-terrorist organizations operating across the region. During the televised segment of the meeting, Hegseth described a situation that he argued had worsened over the past several years due to expanding cartel networks, a surge in synthetic drugs entering the United States, and what he characterized as insufficient enforcement measures under the previous administration. He stated that current military operations are part of a broader shift toward more aggressive interdiction, using both naval and air assets to disrupt suspected trafficking vessels. Hegseth said the U.S. military is acting under President Trump's direct instructions to intensify maritime missions. The Secretary of War described the effort as an ongoing campaign, not a one-time operation, and signaled that more strikes should be expected in the weeks ahead. In his remarks, he offered a detailed and forceful assessment of the administration's approach, saying the United States has moved beyond conventional interdiction and is now authorized to conduct precision strikes on vessels that intelligence agencies assess as actively participating in narcotics transport. He framed these missions as necessary to protect American communities and counter what Washington categorizes as organized criminal threats. Hegseth delivered a lengthy on-camera soundbite summarizing the administration's strategy. He said,
as I've said, and I'll say again, we've only just begun striking narco boats and putting narco-terrorists at the bottom of the ocean because they've been poisoning the American people. And Joe Biden tried to approach it with kid gloves and allowed them to come across the border. Cartels take over community, 20 million people, hundreds of thousands of Americans poisoned. And President Trump said, no, we're taking the gloves off. We're taking the fight to these designated terror organizations. And that's exactly what we're doing. So we're stopping the drugs, we're striking the boats, we're defeating narco-terrorists. And
the statement marks the clearest indication so far that the Trump administration plans to significantly expand its deployment of military assets for operations traditionally led by federal law enforcement, including the Coast Guard and Drug Enforcement Administration. Officials say the new approach relies on a combination of intelligence, coordination, rapid response naval tactics, and expanded rules of engagement designed to accelerate interdiction. According to defense sources, the campaign has primarily focused on the Caribbean Sea and the waters between South America and the U.S. mainland. Analysts note these routes have long been used by trafficking networks moving cocaine, fentanyl precursors, and other illicit substances. Over recent years, maritime smuggling methods have evolved, with traffickers using fast boats, semi-submersible vessels, and disguised commercial craft to avoid detection. The Secretary's comments reflect growing concern in Washington about synthetic opioid flows and the cumulative impact of narcotics on public health and security. U.S. Officials have repeatedly argued that drug cartels operating in the Caribbean basin and parts of Central and South America maintain extensive logistical routes that allow them to penetrate American markets. In his statement, Hegseth linked cartel activity to domestic instability, pointing to rising overdose numbers, territorial expansion by criminal groups, and what he described as the takeover of local communities by organized drug networks. He asserted that past enforcement strategies had failed to curb the threat and that the new military-driven model was being implemented to decisively disrupt those networks. The administration has already authorized several naval engagements in the region, although detailed operational information remains classified. U.S. officials have confirmed that aircraft and naval vessels have been used to disable or destroy boats suspected of smuggling drugs, These actions are conducted under legal authorities tied to counter-terrorism and counter-narcotics designations, enabling the US military to strike vessels assessed as posing an imminent trafficking threat. The Pentagon has said that each strike is preceded by multi-agency intelligence verification and follows established protocols designed to minimize risk to non-combatants. Officials emphasize that the targets are not random vessels, but those linked through evidence-based tracking, surveillance operations, and intelligence sharing between US agencies and partner governments in the region. Hegseth's comments also highlight an important political dimension. He contrasted the current administration's posture with the approach under President Biden, describing the earlier strategy as too limited and insufficient to deter cartel expansion. The secretary framed the new strikes as a decisive break from that era and a shift toward a more confrontational stance. Despite the escalation, the administration has not publicly released a detailed timeline of future actions. Senior defense officials say the operations will continue and may expand geographically depending on intelligence assessments. Analysts expect the Pentagon to increase its coordination with Caribbean governments, several of which have requested additional US support to counter maritime trafficking. During the cabinet session, Hegseth emphasized that the campaign's ultimate objective is to eliminate maritime smuggling routes before drugs reach the United States. He indicated that the administration sees the strategy as part of a broader national security framework aimed at preventing domestic harm and weakening transnational networks. While the Pentagon has described the operations as successful, the full scope of interdicted narcotics and disrupted networks has not yet been disclosed. Officials are expected to release updated figures later in the month as part of an intelligence community briefing on counter-narcotics performance. Diplomatic observers note that the US strategy could have implications for relations with regional governments, particularly those concerned about unilateral military actions near their maritime borders. Washington has said it remains in communication with affected partners and has stressed that the operations are focused exclusively on vessels identified as participating in illicit trafficking. Hegseth's remarks suggest that the administration views the threat from cartel-linked maritime networks as severe, long-standing, and increasingly tied to broader national security risks. By framing the campaign as only the beginning, the secretary signaled that continued military involvement in counter-drug missions is now an established feature of US security policy. The US military is expected to maintain a heightened presence in the Caribbean through the remainder of the year, with surveillance aircraft, naval ships, and joint task force units working alongside federal agencies in the region. Officials say the goal is to disrupt supply chains before they reach US territory, reduce the flow of synthetic opioids and cocaine, and disable trafficking operations' financial and logistical infrastructure. As the administration continues its expanded interdiction strategy, the Pentagon says these missions are being carried out under clear legal authorities and with strict operational oversight. Officials maintain that the focus remains on protecting American lives, reducing drug inflows, and dismantling the networks that sustain trafficking across the Caribbean basin. The Secretary of War's statement concludes the administration's position. The campaign has entered an escalated phase. More strikes are expected, and U.S. operations will continue until the government judges that the threat from narco-terrorist organizations has been sufficiently diminished. The situation remains active, with U.S. officials reiterating that maritime interdiction operations in the Caribbean will continue under President Trump's directive. This is the latest status of the U.S. maritime strike campaign and the administration's stated commitment to intensifying counter-narcotics operations.